you so much for being with us about that proposal. A waiting period of sorts for 18 to 21-year-olds who want to buy semi-automatic AR-15 style weapons. Is that something you could support?
It's certainly something I would support, John. John, I would go farther than that, as would virtually every Democrat here in the Senate. But the art of politics is the art of the possible. And given the brutality, the tragedy of what happened in Uvalde, given the number of mass shootings that have happened just since then, there is a sense of urgency here about taking concrete steps. They wouldn't address all the sources of gun violence in our country, not by a long shot, but they would help us begin to make some real efforts at keeping guns out of the hands of those who send out strong signals that they intend to harm others. So a waiting period for 18 to 21-year-olds to purchase these so-called assault rifles, the weapons that were used in Uvalde and in other recent mass shootings in Buffalo and in other tragic killings, is one important step. So-called red flag laws that provide federal incentives for states to adopt laws that, with due process protections, make it possible for local law enforcement, for school officials or parents to petition a court to temporarily take away the weapons of those who are giving clear signals of an intent to harm others, as happened in Parkland, is another idea that is being actively discussed that I'm helping work on. My home state of Delaware, states like Florida, Indiana, a total of 19 states in the District of Columbia already have these so-called red flag laws. I think that would be a great thing for us to incentivize other states to take up and pass as well.
So what you're telling me is, no, this is not everything you want, but the fact that it is not everything or maybe even most of what you want will not keep you or would not keep you for voting yes if this was the package put on the table.
That's right. One of the most difficult, painful meetings I've ever had was with a group from Delaware called Moms Demand Action. Young mothers whose children were just starting elementary school sat in my office now several years ago and demanded to know why their elementary school student children needed to be taking drills for active shooters. They really pressed me to think hard about the impact on young Americans' children and what it says to them about our willingness to take steps to protect them. I remember as a kid doing nuclear test drills, where we had to duck and cover, and how that made me feel unsafe and insecure. But it was so distant, the idea that there'd ever be a nuclear war with the Soviet Union. Tragically, this isn't distant. This is reality, and it is regularly happening over and over again. So, John, any step we can take, I think we should take. The last bill that President Biden signed into law in this area was a bill I did with John Cornyn to require that state police be notified if a person prohibited from buying a gun, a convicted felon, say, goes into a federally licensed firearm dealer and lies on their background check and tries to get a gun. Does that solve everything? No. But it'll take guns out of the hands of several hundred people a year, and that might save lives and is well worth doing.
Do you have a sense of where these talks are this morning and how close you might actually be to a vote on this?
I spoke to several members who've been driving this, to Senator Murphy, Senator Cornyn, and several others on the floor last night and this morning, and I'm optimistic. There's a sense of determination and purpose. But I'll remind you, we have to get at least 60 votes to pass anything of substance in this Senate, and that's a challenge. As long as President Biden and Minority Leader, Republican Leader McConnell, and Senate Leader Schumer are all pulling in the same direction, are all supporting these talks, I am optimistic. Frankly, what's maddening here is that the overwhelming majority of the American people, a majority of gun owners and a majority of Republicans, support strengthening background checks and red flag laws, yet this is so difficult for us to get done.
Can I ask you to take off your Judiciary Committee hat and put on the Foreign Relations hat for a second here?
Sure.
President Biden, we understand, is planning on meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. That is someone who he had said at one point he wanted to make Saudi Arabia a pariah state, but now meetings are apparently planned. Oil will no doubt be one of the subjects. I want to play for you what Congressman Adam Schiff said about the possibility of a President Biden-Mohammed bin Salman meeting. Listen.
I wouldn't go. I wouldn't shake his hand. This is someone who butchered an American resident, cut him up into pieces in the most terrible and premeditated way. And until Saudi Arabia makes a radical change in terms of its human rights, I wouldn't want anything to do with him.
He's talking about the killing of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. How do you feel? Would you support President Biden meeting with Mohammed bin Salman?
Well, John, I've been working through this, reflecting on this. I will support President Biden in his outreach to MBS and to the Saudi kingdom. But let's be clear. What has changed since President Biden, as candidate Biden, said that MBS is and should be a pariah is Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. The unity of the West, something President Biden has done a terrific job on, pulling together NATO, pulling together the EU, getting unanimity in supporting sanctions on Russian oil and gas. It is going to fade and wane if we can't deliver American, North American oil and gas, and if we can't get more resources into Europe soon. The Saudis are the sole country that has a significant amount of quickly, readily deliverable oil and gas that can help address this. This is the sort of compromise that makes politics painful, John. And I don't think President Biden, I'm not speaking for him, this is just an observation, I don't think he's stepping back from criticizing Saudi Arabia's human rights record or criticizing MBS for the direction of the brutal murder of Adnan Khashoggi, a U.S.-based journalist. But I think he's recognizing the reality that the other countries that could also quickly produce more oil for the world market are countries that are even worse and have long been American adversaries and are the subject of our sanctions. So frankly, I do support this outreach.
Oil before human rights?
It is striking a very tough balance and recognizing that the human rights violations that are being committed every day by Russian troops in Ukraine deserve a forceful, full-throated, united Western opposition. And I'm not stepping back from criticizing MBS and the Saudis for the ways in which they have oppressed their people internally. John, frankly, part of why this was so upsetting, angering, disappointing to many of us here in the Senate when MBS was ultimately tied by our intelligence community to having directed this killing was that MBS is a reformer. Initially, when he took leadership in the Saudi kingdom, he made significant progress. That's partly why it was such a bitter disappointment to see him begin to do things like the war in Yemen, like this murder of Khashoggi, that went back to some of the worst excesses of some of the most brutal authoritarian regimes. The Saudis have made progress in the conduct of the war in Yemen and in changing the direction of the war in Yemen. But in terms of any real accountability for MBS for the direction of the killing of Khashoggi, we have not seen that so far, and it's frankly difficult to hold someone in his position accountable. I do think this is a hard choice, but one that I will support.
Senator Chris Coons, I do appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, John.